Namaste, welcome, and good evening. Welcome, everyone. Really great to see you all. It's a miracle we made it, actually. Have you ever thought about the impossibility of that? The impossibility of being a human being? So simple on the outset, but so complex within. And not only that, but the miracle that there's a group of us who see a value in self growth and finding a self that's the wellspring of all life, a self by which all growth is possible. That's amazing. So, with that tenderness, that welling up in our hearts, we'll start with our session of Upanishad with a prayer. And I invite you to join me in chanting Om 3 times. Om.
Om.
Om. Om. Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Bhadarayanam Sutra Bhashukratau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Guruvatmeti Murtibheda Vibhagine Vyomavatyaptadehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahay. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace be, peace be, peace be. Relax, relax, relax. Hari Om. So let us also chant the Shanti Pata in the book, the first mantra that you find, as the gateways into the Vedanta. Of course, beginning with that auspicious Mangalam, that auspicious start, Om. You just have to chant Om. Then everything is purified. Om is the master key, and Upanishad begins with Om. So I'll chant this as a refresher, and then also we'll chant it once more as a group, where I'll break it apart. That way you can join in. Om Shanno Mitra Shamvarunaha Shanno Bhavatvaryama Shanna Indra Brahaspatihi Shanno Vishnurukramaha Namo Brahmane Namaste Vayo Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahmasi Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahma Varishyami Ridham Varishyami Satyam varishyami tanmamavatu tadvaktaramavatu avatu mam avatu vaktaram Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. the very nature of those pitches and intonations makes you stand at attention. When you hear it, sometimes you feel your hair is participating in that. The hair is also standing on that horripilation happens. So let us chant this together. You can repeat after me. Om
Om
Shanno Mitra
Shanno Mitra
Shambarunaha
Samvarunaha
Shanno Bhavatvaryama
Shanno Bhavatvaryama
Shanna Indro
Shanna Indro
Brahaspatihi
Brahaspatihi
Shanno Vishnurukramaha
Shanno Vishnurukramaha
Namo Brahmane
Namo Brahmane
Namaste Vayo
Namaste Vayu
Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahmasi
Tvameva Praktiksham Brahmahi
Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahma Varishyami
Tvameva Brahmakyam Satyavarishami
Ridam Varishyami
Ridam Varishyami
Satyam Varishyami
Satyam Varishyami
Tanmamavatu
Tanmavavate
Tadvaktaramavatu
Tatvaktaramavate
Avatu Mam
Avatu Mam
Avatu Vaktaram
Avatu Bhaktaram
And then in one chorus Om Shanti Shanti
Shanti
Shanti.
Shantihi.
Beautiful. Great. So each time you chant that mantra, we saw that we're connecting with the gods, those devatas. And for us, that also deeply is connected with our sense organs and mind, our faculty to comprehend and see things clearly. For the yogi, as she's going and embarking on what begins as an inner journey, and those senses become refined, clarity means that we have a much more enjoyable experience of life. How do I know I'm progressing? When you feel cheerful inside for no reason. So here we're invoking that quality, crystal like mind that's empowering the senses, a luminous mind. And how we develop that beautiful statement that we saw, Namaste Vayo, O breath, the wind that's dancing in my nostrils. Tvameva pratyaksham brahmasi, tvameva pratyaksham brahma varishyami, ridam varishyami, satyam varishyami. My God, my truth, which is holding the universe together, the rhythm. I surrender to that breath. And then also to the Guru, that we have a certain rapport and have that samvada, that back and forth. So, and then what is to be explained or what is about to unfold is the teaching of Upanishad, which we've seen. And Upanishad or Vedanta, you can say, is the art and science of living. And it's also the means of knowing oneself, the self that's beyond the body, mind, ego complex. What do I mean by art and science is that the Vedanta, as we're starting to explore in these meditations, the Samhita Upanishadam, is that Vedanta gives us a nuanced and refined way of processing our information, a nuanced way or instruction on living intelligently. There, that means that you have an integrated life. You start to feel that you're a part of a greater system. You start appreciating the rising sun. You start appreciating the earth below and feeling that the body, mind, ego is deeply woven in the web of creation. And as you reflect on that, our little problems that cause us so much pain and suffering start to fade away. And another part of that is that you start feeling that there's an order, there is a rhythm to this. That means even my anger has a cause. Even my lust has a cause. There's some reason behind this effect, and that effect is not out of place, meaning your mind is not crazy. Your mind is not out of place. The deep peace that wells up in you from just that recognition, you need not trace back the cause and past life regression and all that mess. Just recognizing this relationship between cause and effect can bring a tremendous amount of peace. And Vedanta first shows us that. So that's what I mean by art and science. Art because a sweet and nuanced approach, and science because we get instructions on how to expand the mind and also gather the mind's resources and let them rest in a space, concentration. But is that what Vedanta does alone? No. Mother Shruti there assumes and knows, really knows, that at present we're currently identifying with what we have, what's in close proximity to us. What's very close to me is my current sensations that are possible by this little hut called the body. Ayatanam, this little abode. And this is me. And Mother Shruti knows that that's where I currently identify. So she takes my hand and walks me through a step-by-step process of expanding the mind, which we're learning about in these contemplations or meditations. But the same Shruti also frees you from that, also releases you from that. That's what I mean by a pramana, or a means of knowing the self. That there is a self, an unchanging witness to this dance of bodies. And she shows you that. Meaning, what do I mean by release? Releasing us from the false notion, a thought that we're hanging on to, that I am bound or subject to limitations, that I am ignorant and I can never know it all. And that more importantly, that I am unhappy. I'm not comfortable with myself. That's why I'm acting to forget myself, whether it's some gossip or a few drinks. Because when I forget myself, then those problems go, but then they come back. So she kindly releases you through that by the process of listening and exposing oneself to this pramana. It becomes a direct means for that. And in fact, you're the exact opposite, actually. You're the limitless. You are consciousness or knowledge itself. You are Anandam, Satchidananda. That's the nature of Atma, the self. What do I get by all this study? Abhayam. This Upanishad will say, Abhayam pratishtham vindate. You gain fearlessness. Fearlessness because the Vedanta gives you a vision where you don't see the other, objectify the other. There is no other. That's what the real meaning of Advaitam is. Sometimes we're quick to rush to say everything is one. No, not really. It's not one and also not two. What? Now you're just confusing me. No, I'm not trying to confuse you. What I mean is that there are differences. That's what we see around us. There's so many differences, but those differences are always in degrees. They're never in essence. They're bubbling up and appearing and then disappearing. That's why not two. When we say one, our mind has this tendency to think one or the other, good, bad, right, wrong, yes, no, 1, 0. But here, this kind of oneness or this Advaita Drishti we're talking about is a kind of oneness where I can appreciate and see the dance of so many differences and know it is essentially all shining in, appearing in me, the Atman. So that kind of seeing the beauty and the plurality of things, like Pujya Swamiji said so beautifully, when you see the more cuts in the diamond, more luster shines. More traditions, more religion, more thoughts, more dialogue, more debate. Bring it all. That's why Adi Shankaracharya's grand guru said, we're not opposed to anybody, totally free. We're ready and open to discuss anything because nothing can displace you when you're that big, that Atman, that self. And the preparation for this is getting clear on what we're really seeking. That's the first step in viveka, or keen discernment, is that I want that lasting joy. I seek happiness. And when we have that, it's a kind of, they call it prameya siddhi, accomplishment of knowing what it means to be a human being and what our ultimate end is. Our ultimate end is that everyone wants happiness. Some religious person may say, no, my reason is I'm not seeking happiness. I'm seeking to please God in all my work. Very good. But that's not a universal experience. An atheist may say, I get a lot of pleasure from looking into my research and science and dismissing the possibility of God. But what's common in both is that they both deeply can't stand themselves being unhappy. And they desire in their heart's core happiness. And according to the Vedanta, God is happiness. But that doesn't sound right to us on the outset because we're very much confused between happiness and pleasure. So that clarity will come the more we expose ourselves to the Upanishad, but that viveka, that prameya siddhi, what is it that I'm really after, is a key part of this study. And then naturally the vairagya comes. Naturally we stop overindulging and then course correct in appropriate ways. That detached engagement idea comes. And then pramana siddhi. We become available to listen to the Shruti, Taittiriya Upanishad. So let us take up where we last left off, which was a series of meditations. Those meditations were called Samhita, Upanishadam, cluster meditations. So we saw that the Guru introduced the cluster meditations as a way to help expand our mind and prepare the ground for this self-knowledge. So get us integrated. Now there were, just a little review, there are 5 different kinds of meditations. So far we looked at 4 of them. And what's amazing, as I was telling you, describing poetically as the mother taking your hand, walking you back home, what I mean by that is that we always start with where we're at, what's obvious to us. So naturally, the Guru started with the physical. The first meditation was centered on lokaha, on the relationship our body has with the earth. Athari lokam prithivik pu urvarupam dhauruttararupam akasha sandhihi vayusandhanam iti adilokam. So adilokam was with reference to the physical world around us. That in itself is a big leap. We forget the simple truths of spreading our chest open and looking into the vast sky. Or we forget the simple truth of being grounded, taking our socks and shoes off and loosening our belt and going for a walk outside. We forget to do that. It can be that simple. So the Guru reminds you to get connected with the nature that way. Now, we also saw it was a bit peculiar, but we moved from the physical to the energetic. And the energetic was described as the nature of the different fires. The fire below, Agni, then Aditya, the sun above, then this Apaha, which means water, but it really means the moisture in between. And then the connecting link being the lightning. Now, just when you reflect upon that image, it evokes a kind of sense of beauty and wonder. But I was reflecting a little bit about how this really seems to be rocking of science. Though I don't always want to say that Vedas are scientific because Vedas are a pramana to know things that are not available anyway. So that has to be very clear. We don't have to try to always reduce Vedas into science because science is something you can keep updating and improving upon. This you can't. But one thing I did think was really interesting is um, is that there is some scientific evidence in what's said here. So I wanted to just open that up a little bit more. My good friend Sushila brought this up, and I gave her a very poor answer to her probing question, which was, how is lightning connected to the fire below and the sun above? Can you explain this? I'll try. So when I was thinking about this, doing a little research, let's take all these different components. First, let's figure out what the mantra says. Prior form is fire, below. Fire or Agni means the warmth or luminosity fire element below. It could mean the energy or warmth of the earth, or it could be physically the Yajñashala. Then also the posterior form is the sun, the large fire, the big sun above. What's in between is known as the atmosphere, apaha, which has warmth in it and also the element of fire and water. Then, where it seemed a little bit peculiar was Vaidyuta Sandhanam. How does lightning connect here? Can you help me expand my mind or help me see those connections? Well, from a scientific perspective, it's really fascinating to look at how that lightning is formed. So what happens? I'm no scientist, but I'll do my best to explain what I looked into. What happens is first, when you think about this body of Earth, this Earth itself, there's maybe close to 71% of water, huge water content. And that water is also mingling in the atmosphere. And it's lifted by or pulled up by that physical liquid turns into a gaseous substance through heat, through the sun above. So now we're starting to already connect things. Water below and water in between, lifting up, and it's transmuting itself into a kind of gas or vapor. Now, what's amazing about that is that when that vapor lifts, and that's not something far out to sea. Sometime you may have left your pet's bowl of water, little cousin's bowl of water, and then you go back and she didn't drink any, but you see some of it's gone down, meaning it's evaporated. So we experience that all the time in our life. So that evaporated condensation takes place, and that particles of moisture come into the atmosphere. But the thing is, the atmosphere can't hold all that vapor once it gets a certain mass. So what happens is that it starts to collect or condense around a kind of nucleus, which may be a dust particle, or it could be various salt crystals from the ocean, or some kind of bacteria, or it could even be volcanic ash. We're talking about really small, fine particles here. So what happens is that from a vapor, then it starts to come back into a liquid form and gather around that. The weight of it is too much to hold, so it starts to gather around that. And this is what we call the forming of a cloud. What's amazing about that is that those clouds and the combination of those particles and vapor also contain protons and electrons, which is positive and negative energies. And they're commingling with one another. Now, what science is even kind of confused about is there's a phenomenon that when those protons and neutrons and those bacterias and then vapors coalesce and mingle, there can be a tendency for them to start to split or divide themselves. What will happen is that the protons or the positive energies rise to the top, and then the bottom of the cloud, that gaseous substance now centering around these holding particles, the bottom gets heavy. The bottom becomes heavy with those negatively charged particles. Okay, I know this is a long-winded answer, but bear with me. A very strong negative base from the cloud, from above. But the thing is that the Earth itself is charged with positive energy, with those protons. And what will happen is when the weight of those electrons get heavy enough, it starts to take the protons from the earth and draw them up. It forces them up like they're magnetized to that because the opposites attract. So they get pulled up. That warmth and positive energy of the earth is now getting drawn up to the negative force. Now, what's crazy is that when that force gets so strong that creates a kind of spark. And it's like it breaks the insulating properties of the atmosphere. So now we're just talking about sheer power when those negative and positive forces meet. And what's crazy about that is that that power then is like an electric force. It's actually, lightning is electricity. So it's like a discharge of this electricity. And what's even more crazy about it is that though this was all where we started with the sun and water, but the very strike of that lightning, I found out was, I wrote this down, 5 times the heat of the sun, the surface of the sun. That's amazing. That's 54,000 degrees Fahrenheit. I could cry. That's so awesome. When you think about nature and the sheer power and beauty of it, it's just so phenomenal. So that single streak or bolt that's connecting that cloud above and that earth below is 5 times hotter than the face of the sun. Not the core of the sun, but the face of the sun. And what's also amazing about that is it rips through the atmosphere, and that break through the sheer power is what we hear as thunder. That's why, depending upon your proximity, it can sound like a snap or a crack. Maybe you've experienced that where it struck really close. And it's like a huge rip through the atmosphere. Or if you're farther away, you hear those ripple effect, the rumble of the thunder. And we don't connect those also because that light is like a million times faster than the sound, how it travels through the atmosphere. So this is a way of scientifically exploring what the Guru's saying here. Atadi Jaurisham. There's some big sun, there's some big star above, Aditya. There's some warmth and fire below. There's an atmosphere in between. And there's this expression and most beautiful form of God when it joins, called lightning. That's why for the yogis, lightning is like the Sushumna Nadi. You balance prana and apana. Then you send your energy through the middle channel. There's so many meaning to this. That's like a microcosmic scale. Here we're talking about the macrocosmic scale. So I thought I would just overload you with a little bit of science. But I think this is so fascinating. And it just, the silvery streaks of that lightning, just meditating on that symbol itself, really uplifting to the mind, which is our main goal. Then we learned about the following mantra was about Vidyam. And this will obviously be familiar for the student at the Gurukulam, meaning that the relationship between Acharya and the Antevasi, the live-in student. And we saw that what joins them is the teaching itself, pravachanam. So Vidya, knowledge may be there, student teacher may be there, but when the teacher is bold and generous enough to reveal what they hold dear in their hearts and what's so sacred, which is this Brahma Vidyam, that pravachanam is what keeps their relationship together. That's the strong bond that they share. And that bond, as we've been exploring, is like none other. Guru can play many roles, but essentially Guru is expounding who you are, what to be. Now, we also learned about prajam, which was the relationship of the propagation of the race. And we saw the importance of that and also expanding the young brahmachari's mind and giving them a very safe and responsible kind of indulgence, if you will. That may not be the most appropriate word, but thinking about the sexual act as something divine and sacred and as a necessity. So our ancient acharyas were not ever condemning this process or looking at it as a sin, as some other theologies and religions do. No, we see this as a divine act and also something that should be exposed to those young students. And they talked about prajananagum sandhanam. It's the love, really, that's joining the partners together. And it's the love that's holding the family together. Now we're going to move on to a new mantra. This is the last of the upasana in this section. It's on the individual. So I'll chant this. If you find in your book or text, it begins with atadhyatmam. Atadhyatmam. Adhyatmam. So it's about the individual itself. So I'll chant it and then you can repeat after me. Atadhyatmam adharahanupurvarupam uttarahanuruttararupam vak sandhihi jikva sandhanam ityadhyatmam. Now if you'd like to repeat. Atadhyatmam
Atadhyatmam
adharahanupurvarupam
adharahanupavaram
uttarahanuruttararupam
uttarahanurutatarupam
vak sandhihe
vak sandhihi
jikva sandhanam
chitva sandhanam
ityadhyatmam.
ityathyatmam.
Great. Iti adhyatmam. Thus, the teaching on the individual. Atman here, adhyatmam, means the self, the individual person. So this is interesting. You could think about how will the Guru explain the different connections on our personhood, our personality, and our self. Instead of talking about the spirit, the Guru is now giving you an anatomy lesson on your jaw and the speech faculty. So what does that mean? Let's unpack it. We saw earlier in all these Upanishad, there was a certain mantra that was used that the Guru could supply and superimpose different parts or connections upon that mantra. So that mantra was Ishetva. And so here, the E, or the first part of that mantra, the prior form, is said to be the lower jaw. Adara hanu puurva rupam. Adhara hanuhu means the lower jaw. Then the posterior form, uttara hanuruttara rupam, is the upper jaw. Vak sandhihi. The middle part, she, is speech organ. Vak. Speech organ. Jikva sandhanam. What's linking them together? What's the sandhanam here? The tongue. Jikva. So now we're talking about your speech. We're getting very intimate with your speech organ. So vak, sometimes vak means sound or word, but vak means this whole capacity to produce sound. And this is what we're to meditate on regarding the individual, adhyatmam. What could it mean? Well, this is helping the student realize the importance and value of what you say. The words that you utter have a huge part in creating and wielding your own identity. So the words that you use can make or break your life, and it can be as simple as one word. And thinking about it even deeper too, the words that you ruminate on, your thoughts are bubbling up for you in terms of words, and that's what you're identifying with. So a large part of our identity is based upon speech and word. In fact, Upanishad will say it, nama rupa. Everything is nothing but name and form. Nama, a word. So here we're to reflect upon the faculty of how our identity is related with our speech. Honestly, I would say that the majority of most problems we face in relationships is because of inability to communicate properly, inability to express our needs, inability to yield and allow the other person to say what's on their mind, inability to understand what was implied by the words that were used. And also inability to follow up and keep with the promises, the things that we say, the linking between what we say and what we do. All this is centered around speech. So the guru knew that and wanted to help bring the student's mind into seeing the importance of speech. So here we're to reflect on the upper jaw, the lower jaw, the capacity to utter sound. Ah. But the formation of those different sounds is not possible without the tongue being employed. Jigwa. So that tongue acts as a kind of breaker by which these different consonants were formed, meaning new different words and arrangements. So you really declare your personality or present yourself to others by the words that you use, the speech that you use. Not only that, but speech also is connected in Vedanta. Speech is connected with the deity of Agni, or light. Agni is the devata of speech. And why that is too is because speech is, ideally, speech should be used to bring light to different subjects. That's why you should always, before you speak, you should see, is there a willing listener? Will my words be received? That's a really important part of speech. Next time you go through the Starbucks line, before you say thank you, is that man waiting to receive that? Have you connected your eyes? Have you looked into each other? And then when you say and utter those words, they're fully received. And that can brighten someone's day. But typically, oh, thanks, later. We don't even pay attention to these things. Or more like, you got it wrong. It's double shot of espresso. Because it's going to be a long day. See, we use those words and then we think all day, it's so long, when will it end? So instead of using words that are condemning ourselves or limiting ourselves, I can do it. I can make it. That's okay. Maybe he didn't know. So speech, the beauty and power that you have just by the word, by the spoken word. And that spoken word alone you're listening to, and that becomes what's reverberating as thoughts in your mind. Why did she do it? Why did he do it? How could I do it? So these are all words, and by reflection upon this adhyatmam, we're reflecting on how we use our words. Now, I'll give you also a more psychic or mystical meaning of this too. Those words, especially when we're chanting this Sanskritam and creating those vibrations, they also deeply influence the brain. So the brain, you can think of it as a triune brain. There's the back here is the reptilian brain, they call it. Then in the middle is the amygdala, or the limbic system. And then that front part of the brain is more connected with the prefrontal cortex. So what's amazing is that the vibrations and sounds that you chant, ah, ooh, ha, hoo, those sounds affect those different regions. So you literally light up your brain in a vibratory way when you chant mantra and chant these sounds. So that ha, or that very open guttural sound, ga, 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 ha, that sound is definitely influencing and impacting the back of the head. Yeah, Shishila.
What happens, Advait, if you say something beautiful but you don't mean it? You're saying something, but then that's not what you really mean. Oh, you're beautiful, but actually inside you're just saying it, or something.
Yeah.
I mean, so how does that relate to?
Yeah, that's a great question. That means that your words won't reach their desired end. Meaning, if let's say you're saying that to a person, that won't sink into them. So we have the capacity to know things deeper at a more energetic, felt way. When somebody says that to you and you know they don't mean it, it's not going to be received.
But then that's not your identity. That's not who you are.
That's true. You are beauty itself. So yeah, and the thing on the part of the person saying that too, what happens negatively for them, for the person who's uttering those words out of untruth, meaning they don't mean it, is that they lose self-confidence. They don't realize it in the moment, but they lose self-trust in them because when they're uttering things, they know in the back of their mind, I don't really mean it. So the next time somebody says, would you write me back and get back to me on that message? And they say, yeah, I'll do it later. They know in the back of their mind, I'm capable of not doing it. That's called lack of self-trust or self-confidence. So both parties really suffer that way. But the listener will have a feeling, it didn't really sink in. Or maybe they'll know it, but they see that their actions don't align. So that's what I mean by miscommunication. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
anyway, Satyam Shivam Sundaram. That's the nature of the Atman, the most beautiful. So that way, that fellow is telling the truth. So, but he doesn't know it. So, what I was saying is that these sounds, these vibrations, also have the ability to activate those different parts of the brain. And that's also just more of a kind of subtle felt sense. When you chant ah or when you chant ooh, the palatal region, and you're touching upon that talu. We talked about that importance of the talu space, that soft palate. It's like it's sending up that vibration through the center of the skull. Supposedly you can't feel the center of your brain, but the yogi can. They can feel that subtle sense can be felt there. You can draw your attention there. Similarly, this decision-making cortex region can become very luminous and open. And that's with the more labial sounds, when you vibrate that sound. So this is the teaching on Adhyatmam. Athadhyatmam adarahanuvpu urvarupam uttarahanuruttara vak sandhihi jikva sandhanam ityadhyatmam. Continuing. So these are the 5 meditations: physical, energetic, which we really tried to exhaust all the meaning in that; cultural, about the teaching; familial, how family takes place; and then lastly, we saw the individual, you, reflecting on how you wield your identity. Iti ma mahasagumhitaha ye eva meta mahasagumhita vyakyata veda sandhiyate prajaya pashubhihi brahmavarchasena nadyena suvargena lokena. So if you'd like to chant this together. Iti ma
Itimam
mahasagumhitaha
Mahasamhitaha
ya evam eta
Ya Evameta
mahasagumhita
Mahasaguntiha
Samhita
vyakyata veda
Vyapyata
Yakyata
Vedam
Veda
sandhiyate
Sandhikate
Sandhyate
prajaya pashubhihi
Prajaya
Prajaya Pashubhihi
brahmavarchasena
Brahmavanchasena
Brahmavarchasena
anadyena
Anadena
Anadyena
suvargena
Suvargena
Vargena
lokena.
Lokena.
Okay. Iti, thus it is said, iti ma, these mahasagumhita, these great cluster meditations, these great blendings. Yaha evam eta mahasagumhitaha vyakyata. So we expounded, the Guru saying, we expounded these 5 great blendings, or these 5 great connection meditations. Vyakyataha Veda. If you understand them, if you practice them regularly, you start allowing your mind to ride along these currents, Veda, what happens? So Guru also knows the tendency of the student is to skip to the end of the book. Just give me the cliff notes. So the Guru has to say, what do you get? Tell me the reward. What is it that I get by doing all this? I just tell me about the Brahman. Let's just cut to the chase, Guru. So no, actually, if you practice this, you get rewarded. Every action has a result. And that should inspire you. So though we talk sometimes in Vedanta, we condemn karma, na karma na prajayadhanena tyagene ke. We condemn action. That is not a condemning in the sense of saying that you won't get anything by it. It's a condemnation in saying that it clearly is stating that when the fundamental problem is avidya, not knowing, you have to know. You have to gain jnanam. But this action can give you wondrous results, and the Guru says what that is. So those who understand what we expounded Veda, sandhiyate, they get these things. They're united with what? Prajaya. Prajaya. They have a good family. And prajaya here, you mean for a young brahmachari, could mean that you're going to have great offspring, intelligent children. Ideally, leaving the Gurukulam, then finding a spouse, a partner, and then or building a family, and jumping into the world and creating your finding your purpose and working towards that. So the first thing that's said is that you're going to have progeny, prajaya. That could mean intelligent children, good students, so on and so forth. The second thing is pashubihi. You'll have cattle. Pashubihi can mean that in modern terms, modern day, cattle back then is wealth. So pashubihi means that you're going to have all your material needs taken care of, wealth. Also, so that's the second thing. Third thing, brahmavarchasena. We discussed that. You'll start to get that glow around you when you start conserving your energy and allowing your mind to reflect properly. That light of sattva is going to shine in you. So when that starts to shine, you experience that as peace, shanti. And then also too, people feel that around you. You're less nervous. And that's even at a physical level, that's going to change your odor. When you're not nervous, you're going to smell better. So brahmavarchasena. I think we can sense that too. I mean, animals have that faculty much more enhanced than we do. Like these squirrels of Sambararanya, they can smell like the lavender or the mint and or the predator, prey. They have that ability to sense, smell really far off or get that kind of intuitive insight. So we have that ability too. And one can definitely feel when they're in the presence of such a yogi. It's got this brahmavarchasam. So that's the third thing. Fourth is anadhyena. That means that you have plenty of food. You won't go hungry. Food will be available. And then lastly, to top it all off, suvargyena lokena. You have that feeling of the joys of a higher world. Suvargyena lokena. Lokena means a field of experience. It could mean that swarga, it could mean that you go to heaven, that when you drop this body, you go to a higher place. But I would like to take a more practical, immediate experience that you could have would be that your field of experience, lokaha, is that it becomes more pleasant. It becomes like heaven on earth, actually. That's what some of the great masters say. Don't seek heaven somewhere outside. Heaven's right here on earth. You just have to open your eyes and look around. Take a deep breath. Relax yourself. Start saying things clearly. So, iti mahasagumhitaha ya eva meta mahasagumhita vyakyata veda sandhiyate prajaya pashubhi brahmavarchasena nadhyena suvargena lokena. If you understand this and you practice it, you get good family life. You have wealth, pashubhi. You'll start to glow from the inside out, brahmavarchasam. You won't go hungry. Your food will be taken care of for you, meaning you'll have the bank balance in modern terms. You'll have the available resources nearby or good friends to help you out and cook a meal for you when you're feeling a little tired. Suvargena lokena. And also too, the way that you're processing the world is more beautiful. This world becomes not a prison house. but more like a carnival, a play, where you can start to develop your personality and then feeling like you have an infinite goal and all of your small, small goals are aligned with that kind of chasing of a higher purpose. That's when you start connecting with the Ishvara. So we saw earlier that these factors, these different factors in the meditation here, these 5 meditations, are really about helping your mind get related to the Ishvara, Saguna Brahman. So when you're related to that Ishvara, then you have yoga prakriti versus bhoga prakriti. Instead of your actions being kind of formulated around indulgences, your actions have a kind of higher purpose. I heard a CEO of a great company that really inspires me talk about this as kind of an infinite goal. You find that great people who are really successful in this world, they have a kind of goal that is not defined by like a start and end point. They call it infinite goal. You have a goal that's like a higher purpose, one that there's not really an end to it. There's no reach to it. And when you set such a goal like that, the very path of walking or the very joys, those subtle joys of reaching, trying to reach that, are very rewarding. And therefore, when you create finite goals, those finite goals have a common hub or center which you can reach your infinite goal or head towards your infinite goal. It makes life really enjoyable. So that's what could be meant by suvargena lokena. Life becomes a much more enjoyable pursuit. Clarity will dawn. Now, what we're going to see here is we move on to a new section. Here in this next section, we get a couple of mantra that can be used for japa, chanting, and then also too, you can use this for homa. For the new year, we did the homa inspired by these mantra. It's called Medha Shri Kama Japa Homao. The first mantra, which we'll explore here, is more subtle than the previous practices, and that this is really about a japa sadhana, where you take up the mantra and then you repeat it, and it helps you connect with the inner deity. Here, that deity is talked about as Indra. But what's meant by Indra, according to Adi Shankaracharya himself, is Omkara. So this next mantra is actually a reflection on Om. But here, Om is seen as the deity itself. So we have different ways of conceptualizing God. One is a theomorphic idea, like God as a higher being, like God as God, if you will. And there's also like an anthropomorphic idea of God, where God is taking on the form of nature. Like, for example, the lightning bolt as a God, or the wind as a God. That's called anthropomorphic idea of God. So here, the idea of God is taken as Om itself, Omkara. And if you learn and memorize this mantra, you can start using it and chanting it for japa practice. And it's for Medha Shakti. So I'll explain that here, but let's at least just hear it and try to chant it with the time we have left. Yaschandasa mrishabho vishwarupaha Chandobhya dhamrata sambhabhuva Samindra medhaya atspranatu Amritasya devadhareno bhuyasam Shariram me vicharshanam Jigva me madhumattama Karna abhyam bhuri vishruvam Brahmana kosho se medhaya pihitaha Shrutam me gopaya. All right, we'll try to chant this together. Yes, chandasam,
Yaschandasam
rishabho,
Rishabho
vishwarupaha,
Vishwarupaha
chandobhyo,
Chandobhyo
yamrata at sambhabhuva,
Yamrita Sambhabhuva
samindra,
Samindro
medaya at spranatu.
Medaya pranotu
pranotu
Amritasya
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 deva
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 dharano
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 bhuyasam
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 shariram
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 me
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 vicharshanam
visharshanam
vicharshanam
tikva me
hitva me
swame
madhumattama
madhuttama
madhumattama
karna abhyam
karna abhyam
karnabhya
bhuri vishruvam
buddhi
puri
vishwavam
vishruvam
brahmana
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 koshase
koshosi
akshasi
medhaya pihitaha
medaya pitaha
yatiha
shrutam me gopaya.
shrutam me
shrutam me
gopaya.
gopaya.
Do you feel those vibrations in your brain? You feel your brain is on fire, actually. It's a lot, I know. When I first heard this mantra, I thought, how could I possibly learn this? See, limiting language. That's vak, that's speech. That's what we tell ourselves, and then therefore our memory gets blocked. But no, you can do it. You have that power. You can learn this. So this is a very special and celebrated mantra in our tradition because this mantra is supposed to confer what's known as Medha Shakti. Medha Shakti means a mantra that helps purify and enliven your intellect, buddhi, the capacity to reason and discern clearly. And that Medha Shakti can also mean, in which is described in the mantra itself, that Medha Shakti is also for the yogi what's known as retentive power. Sometimes in yoga shastra it's called smriti. For those of you who studied Yoga Sutra, there's a sutra, Shraddha Virya Smriti, Shraddha Virya Smriti Samadhi Prajna Purvaka Iteresham. Patanjali says, for those accomplished students, that faith in the teaching develops a lot of energy. And when they get that energy, they have retentive power, smriti. Smriti means that your memory gets purified and that what you remember stays. What you create is staying. You're not dissipating. That's really powerful. So, like when you commit something to memory on purpose, or you create something on purpose, you have the ability to hold it together and retain that power. So, here the student is chanting this mantra, practicing the japa with it, in order to purify the mind, connect with that higher power or Om, and then also, too, whatever I'm learning from my guru may have the capacity to hold that, to listen to it, to meditate on it, and keep it with me. May I not forget that. May it empower my life. So that's the spirit behind this. And first, it's a crying and calling out to this most eminent among all the Vedas, Rishabha. Rishabha literally means a bull. You might see that word, Yischandasam Rishabha. See that word, Rishabha. Rishabho. So Rishabha means a bull, literally. But the idea behind that is the most eminent or most prominent mantra. You are that of the Chandasam, of the Vedic meter, of the Vedas. And what is that mantra? Om. Om is also Vishwarupaha, all face, many face. Vishwa means all, Rupa. Its form has many faces. So what that means is that what's being indicated here is that the Vedas have so many different mantra, hundreds and hundreds of mantras there. But the Vedas, when you compress them down, what is their essence is said to be Purusha Sukta. Then that Sukta, when you compress that, what is the essence of Purusha Sukta? It becomes Gayatri mantra. What is the essence of Gayatri? Om. Meaning that when you chant Om, you get the essence of the Vedas. So this way we can relax. This way we don't have to chant all the Vedas. And in fact, in traditional times, it wasn't like that. Typically one Veda was prescribed or given to one group of people, and they were to commit to memory that particular Veda, part of part of their kula or their tribe just had that Veda. So maybe they just took Yajurveda and they just focused on that. And what's beautiful about that is because every Veda reveals this wisdom, this jnanam, that Mahavakyam. There's a Mahavakyam in all the Upanishads. So no matter which Veda you studied as a family, you would get this, not only what to do, but you also get this self-knowledge. Nobody's excluded from that. So what's the essence of all these Vedas? Chant Om. You must be getting tired of hearing that. Or maybe you're really enjoying the practice of chanting it. So here, this, you can think of this as just an expanded Om that will help purify the mind and prepare it for that self-knowledge. So we'll look at that more next week. A lot of great things to come. Let us chant with a prayer. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Hari Om.